All right, we are done with creating categories. Let's move on to the next thing on our relationship here, which is actually creating the courses, linking them to categories and to users. So as usual, we'll start by creating models and controllers, actions, and data. So PHP Artisan, make model, course with migration. PHP Artisan, make data, and I'll call this store course data. So I want that to be in a course subfolder, store course data. I also want an action to store the course. So PHP Artisan, make action, course, store course action. And I want a controller for the instructor. Remember that this part is for instructors to create courses, okay? So here I'm going to create a controller, and I'm going to create them in a subfolder called instructor, because everything that is related to instructors creating courses and all whatnot, I want to put that in a subfolder in my controller directory. So instructor, and I'll just say course controller. And yeah, we can start filling in the information. Let's start with the database because it tells us what fields we need to put in the model. So for every course, we want to know who the author is. So here I'm just going to say a table foreign ID, and I'll say user ID, and that will be the author, and say constraint and cascade on delete. So cascade on delete means that we are creating a foreign key that references the ID on the users table. We are constraining it, which means it must have a user. But if we delete a user, then we also want to delete all related courses for that user. And that is what cascade on delete means. We also want to know which category the course belongs to. So in this case, we just say category ID. We also want to constrain that and want to do a cascade on delete as well. Then I want to directly also just link every course to a subcategory. Now you can make this in different ways. If you did not want to reference the category and subcategory, you can just reference the subcategory, and through that you can know what the category is. But that will include doing another join in every query that you write to, even though Eloquent will do that for you, but it will include actually doing a join to be able to tell through a subcategory what the category is. And I want to avoid that. I want to directly access the category with a single join on the categories table. So on every course, I'll reference both the category and the subcategories to make it easier for me to quickly see what the category is. And because we are using subcategory here, and there's no table called subcategory in the database, when we constrain it to the categories table, we have to specify what the table is that we are constraining to. Because by default, Laravel will, in this case, look for the categories table. In this case, it will look for the users table. And here it will try to look for a subcategories table, which we don't have. So we have to specify what the table is that we should be constraining this foreign key to. And we just say what field by default is the ID, but it doesn't hurt to be explicit to say it should look for the ID field in the categories table, and that should match this value. Then those are the relationships that we have in the course model. Now let's put in some of the generic fields that we will have, and we just start with a title. So for every course, we want to get a title. We want to get a subtitle. We want to get a slug, and we want the slug to be unique. We want to get a course description. And for the description, I'm going to make it a text field, in fact, a long text field, so that if authors want to provide long, crazy descriptions to their courses, they can do that in there. So let's make it really big. Then we want to add the level of the course, okay? So the level can be intermediate, it can be advanced, it can be entry level, or it can be all. So whatever level we think the course should be, we're going to do that there. In MySQL, you can easily just say in enum here and say level, which means you provide a list of values that the level should at least be one of those values. This is all right if you want to hard code this information in the database. But because we're using PHP 8 here, let's make use of enums in PHP. So we'll set this to a string value, and we are going to say level. I'll remove this so we don't have to hard code the possible values in the database. In case we wanted to add another level, we should not be touching the database. We'll just go to our enumeration list and pull out one of them. And by default, we are going to create or provide a default enumeration class. So we'll come back to that in a minute. Now, every course should also have a price, and that will be a decimal. Let's set it to 82, so it's going to have up to 2 characters and up to 2 decimal places. And we'll just set the default to 0. So when you create a course, by default, we'll just say the price is 0. Then we want to know when a course is published, because when an instructor creates a course, we want that course to be unpublished so they can start adding content to it. But when they're published, or when it is published, we should be able to know when that is. So I'm just going to call it published at, and initially that will be null, okay? So let's come back very quickly in the next video and create our enum for the course levels.